Oral questions, questions orales. The member for Foothills.
February's job numbers are crushing. 108,000 full-time jobs lost, the largest collapse in full-time employment since 2020, since COVID. Youth unemployment is more than 14%. Canada now has the second highest unemployment and the only shrinking economy in the G7. Let's be clear, it's because of Liberal policies the private sector is hemorrhaging jobs, making the affordability crisis more acute. Will the Liberals admit Conservatives were right, scrap their carbon and fuel taxes that are killing Canadian jobs?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Finance.
Canadians all across this country know that we were thrust into a trade war not of our choosing. Our government is doing everything in its power, using every lever at our disposal to support the Canadian economy and insulate it from further shocks that are, again, beyond our control. What we are doing is diversifying trade. While the Leader of the Opposition was trotting around London, giving speeches on free markets, trying to impress Liz Truss, our Prime Minister was signing tens of billions of dollars in new trade deals to create more opportunities for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Foothills.
The numbers don't lie. The levers that the Liberals are pulling are obviously wrong. Right. 73,000 private sector jobs lost, youth unemployment at more than 14%. It is clear that young Canadians are being locked into the workforce, can't afford housing, and can't afford food while the Prime Minister jet sets to cocktail parties with global elites. Will the Liberals admit that their policies and fiscal plan has failed? Will they adopt the Conservative Youth Jobs Plan that will give Canadian youth hope to build a future here at home?
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Finance.
They will never adopt a Conservative plan because they don't have a plan.
That's right.
They don't propose anything that works on behalf of Canadians that will deliver results for them. Our plan is the plan that we're following.
Right.
That's the plan that Canadians voted for. That's the plan that's working to create jobs for Canadians. And yes, there's choppy waters. We're in a trade war that was not of our choosing, but we're using every lever at our disposal to ensure that Canadians can get ahead.
Hear, hear.
We've offered affordability measures and are signing tens of billions of dollars of new trade agreements to create opportunities for all Canadians.
Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfil.
While the Prime Minister travels the world promoting Brookfield's interests like he's their PM, portfolio manager, here at home, shocking is the only way to describe this morning's job numbers. 84,000 Canadians lost their jobs in February. 108,000 jobs were lost in full-time work, while private sector employment fell by 73,000. Employment mostly fell among men aged 25 to 54, the core working age group, and young people between the ages of 15 and 24. Why can't the Liberals finally admit everything they're doing is an illusion and it's failing Canadian families and young people?
The Honourable Minister for International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, our overseas efforts are delivering concrete results. Last week in India, we secured a $2.6 billion uranium deal. This is not about the billions, it's about the 90,000 plus nuclear workers in Ontario that it's powering. In Australia, the Prime Minister secured a commitment of $10 billion to build major projects across this country. And VistaJet, based in the Gulf, recently placed an order for 40 Canadian-made planes valued over $1 billion. This is about the thousands of workers producing the world-class goods that the world is buying. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfil.
Meanwhile, Mr. Speaker, here at home, our people want to work. They want to produce and they want to provide for their families. Young people want a family and a home for their kids to grow up in. And because of the last 11 years of Liberal failures, a generation has lost hope that that will ever happen. Today's job numbers are a national crisis. Maybe the Prime Minister can focus once not on his Brookfield interests abroad, but what's happening here at home and work with Conservatives to solving this job crisis impacting Canadian families and our young people.
The Honourable Secretary of State for the Canada Regulations and Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, while their leader tours Europe trying to reboot his image for the fourth time, our Prime Minister just returned from Indo-Pacific signing trade deals with world leaders. Let's talk about $2.6 billion in uranium for Saskatchewan. Premier Moe certainly supported it. We didn't hear a word from any Saskatchewan MP on that side. On this side of the House, we're serious about building the strongest economy in the G7. It's time for that leader, that party, to stop the rhetoric, stop the obstruction, help us build Canada strong. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Bellechasse, Les Échemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, the February's job report is concerning. In just 1 month, this government has seen 108,000 full-time jobs lost. This is our worst decline since the 2020 pandemic. While our G7 partners are moving forward, Canada is the only economy that is falling behind. We're still waiting for the results this government promised Canadians. The Liberals' economic policy is a failure. Can they stop punishing job creators? And can they eliminate the taxes and bureaucracy that are destroying jobs in Canada? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister. Mr. Speaker, of course, the jobs result of the last couple of months are negative, and we're aware of this. Why? Why are we here? There is a trade war with our American neighbors. That's something our Conservative friends across the way have a hard time understanding, because it's difficult to send our exports to Canada. Businesses will not invest, and that's the heart of the problem, not Canadian taxes, American tariffs. The honourable member for Bellechasse, Les Échemins-Lévis. Businesses don't invest because there's no confidence. Young people are victims of the government's economic incompetence. In February, youth unemployment climbed to over 14%. In Quebec, 57,000 jobs disappeared in just 1 month. If young people don't have jobs, it's because Liberal policies aren't working. While the Liberals pat themselves on the back, our young people are wondering how they're going to pay the rent. Will the government stop denying the obvious, listen to the Conservatives, and implement our plan? We give them all of our ideas. Why don't they implement them? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Implementing the Conservative plan. But what plan? There is no plan, because for the Conservatives, everything has to do with the industrial carbon tax. That's it. That's all. Come on. We announced an industrial policy for defense, a defense industrial policy that is of great deal of interest on the part of SMEs in Quebec and Canada. We massively invested. The Prime Minister announced investments in the North, in infrastructure. We are currently transforming the Canadian economy. The honourable member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Mr. Speaker, at the start of the conflict in Iran, Tehran launched dozens of airstrikes. All were publicly disclosed, except for the one targeting the Canadian military camp in Kuwait, where still the same Ali al-Salem base, which houses the Canadian military camp, also hosted Italian forces. That very day, Italy publicly said so, but not Canada. Canada concealed this strike for 2 weeks. It didn't even mention it during a House debate on the conflict that the government asked for itself. Why is the whole world informing its citizens except for Canada? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I think we should all prioritize the safety and security of our Canadian armed forces and not expose them to unnecessary risk. Now, we have people, courageous, brave men and women who are operating in a war theater where Iran is launching missiles and drones for operational safety reasons. These disclosures cannot be made. The member for Maskinongé. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals cited operational security as an excuse for their silence, but we're just asking for the same information that other countries are sharing. It would just make sense to inform the public when Canada is under attack. And people are asking, why did the Prime Minister blindly support Donald Trump? Why is he changing his mind every other day? They don't know why. Canadians don't know why he hides the attack on the armed forces. Does the government realize that this undermines public trust? Mr. Speaker, I think the most important thing is for all Canadian Armed Forces members in the region be safe and sound. Our priority as a government and our priority as parliamentarians should be to prioritize the safety and security of our Canadian Armed Forces who are operating in a war theater right now. So, Madam Speaker, for our government, the priority is always to focus foremost on the health and safety of our forces. Mr. Speaker, the war in Iran began when the Prime Minister was away on a trip. After backing Washington, he refused for days to hold a press briefing with the media accompanying him on the tour. Upon his return, he boycotted a debate on the conflict, even though the Liberals had called for it. He refuses to explain his silence regarding the Iranian strike against Canadian troops. And today, he's off to Europe again. Does he understand that on an issue as major as the war he supported, he needs to answer questions? Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's been clear. Canada was not consulted, did not participate, and has no intention of participating in offensive strikes against Iran. We support efforts to end the Iranian nuclear program and the decades of state-sponsored terrorism. Canada's priorities are clear. The Prime Minister said civilian infrastructures need to be protected, international law must be respected, and we will defend the safety of Canadians regardless of where they find in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, this morning's job numbers are a scathing indictment of this Liberal government's economic performance. 108,000 full-time jobs lost, the largest one-month drop since the beginning of COVID, and youth unemployment is now over 14%. We have the only shrinking economy in the G7, and we have the second highest unemployment. So, will the Liberals accept our Conservative proposals, including our youth jobs plan, and remove the taxes, red tape, and bureaucracies that are killing Canadian jobs?
The Honourable Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Opposition knows, there's a war raging that's affecting prices everywhere. In this chaos, Canada's in a strong position. Why? Because we prepared. We invested in jobs and industries like auto, steel, and aluminum. We made sure to keep life affordable for all Canadians with our food, groceries, and essentials benefit for 12 million Canadians. We're cutting taxes. You know why, Mr. Speaker? We have a plan. Preparing before a crisis is our way. Complaining after a crisis is theirs. Get on board.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, talk about before the crisis. For 10 years, this Liberal government has passed anti-development laws, run up the national debt, driven down productivity, driven up the cost of living, bloated the bureaucracy, enriched Liberal insiders, and made Canada the only G7 country with a shrinking economy. Today's job numbers are the result of a decade of failure and lost opportunity, and this Liberal Prime Minister is still taxing, spending, and regulating like the last one. So will they commit today to cut taxes and regulations so Canadians can get back to work?
The Honourable Minister of Artificial Intelligence and Digital Innovation.
Breaking news for the Honourable Member. We cut taxes for 22 million Canadians. Breaking news for this, the Honourable Member. Our food and groceries essential will help 12 million Canadians put food on the table. Breaking news, we have made it easier for first-time home buyers. Breaking news, we are helping families. We are investing in our defense. This is what a plan is like when we knew there was a crisis. We prepared for a crisis. Complaining afterwards with no plan is not helping Canadians.
The Honourable Member Hastings, Lennox and Addington, Tyondinaga.
February's job numbers send a troubling signal for Canada's economy. More than 100,000 full-time jobs have disappeared. Youth unemployment has climbed above 14%, and our economy is now among the weakest performers in the G7. Young Canadians are trying to start their careers at a time when opportunity is sinking. Mr. Speaker, when will this Liberal government start working with opposition to advance practical solutions, including our youth jobs plan, and to remove taxes and red tape that is making it harder for businesses to create jobs?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Finance.
Conservatives live under a rock. We are in a trade war. We have a war raging in the Middle East. Those are not of our choosing. Those global issues and forces just to explain causality, are not the fault of the federal government. They're factors in the world that are affecting the Canadian economy. We're moving through a period of unprecedented economic turbulence. Canadians don't want politicians to stand up in this House and celebrate job losses for political gain. They want a serious government doing serious work to help them get ahead, and that's what we're doing.
The Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington, Tyne-Denaga.
Mr. Speaker, February's job report demands serious attention. Instead, Canadians are hearing dismissive responses to legitimate concerns. This government's very own data shows that last month's decline in full-time employment was the largest decline outside of COVID since 2009. Canadians were promised strong economic leadership. Mr. Speaker, if this Liberal government can't deliver jobs, growth, or hope for the next generation, why should Canadians have any confidence that their economic plan will work at all?
The Honourable Secretary of State for the Canada Revenue Agency.
Mr. Speaker, despite the Conservative rhetoric, look, we know that we're in a trade war. We know our economy has challenges. But last April, Canadians elected a leader with world-class business and economic experience versus a Conservative leader who's never worked one day in the economy. In fact, the only job he's ever created was one for the member of Carleton. So, Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to focus on our economy. We're going to build our economy into the strongest one in the G7. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies.
The February No Jobs report shows the Liberal policies aren't working for Canadians. 108,000 full-time jobs lost, the largest one-month decline in full-time employment since 2020. Youth unemployment shot up by 14%. We have the only shrinking economy in the G7, and now we have the second highest unemployment. Canadians aren't working because Liberal policies aren't working. When will the Liberals accept Conservative proposals, including our youth jobs plan, and remove taxes and bureaucracies that are killing Canadian jobs?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are creating high-paying jobs for young people with our investments in housing. Build Canada Homes will invest $13 billion in housing. It will catalyze new methods of construction, new jobs in factories, new jobs from coast to coast to coast, using Canadian materials, Canadian steel, Canadian lumber. Yes, that's trees to keys. And it will get our youth working, and then they can live in those homes.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent à Kawinrak. Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, figures are stubborn. In fact, they're very sad. When you look at jobs rates last February, 108,000 Canadians lost their jobs. 108,000 women, men that are looking for work today. That's the truth, Mr. Speaker. This is evidence that after 10 years of Liberal government, Liberal policies do not work well. When will the government be effective in its work? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, we are being effective. We find ourselves in a situation that was created by the U.S. trade policy. American tariffs have put us in this situation. Canadian businesses are having a hard time investing because they have no predictability as to the operational environment, given the uncertainty brought about by the U.S. What we can do is massively invest in infrastructure and reposition our economy in the sector of defense. I see a lot of enthusiasm on the part of SMEs in Quebec. They are looking forward to being able to enter the supply chain in defense. It will work. Easy to accuse the U.S., but the truth is that Liberal taxes and bureaucracy are 100% in the hands of this government. Remember, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister got elected saying that July 21st, it'll be over. There won't be any more tariffs. No more elbows up. We see thumbs up, actually, at the White House. That's the reality. But even worse yet, unemployment is now at 14% among the youth. When young people are already having a hard time getting housing, buying groceries, now they're having a hard time finding work. Is the government aware of the fact that this youth policy just doesn't work? Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, the tariff war with the U.S. is extremely challenging, but we have a plan that works. We are the country that is drawing in the most investments currently, and it's working. The military defense, strategy, these strategies are working. It won't happen overnight, but we're moving forward. Canadians believe in this. They continue to support us, and we will do our job for Canada. That's our plan. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly and now the Public Accounts Committee have unanimously agreed. In fact, all parties, including the Liberals, are calling on the government to launch an inquiry into the federal government's IT fiascos. Curam, Phoenix, ArriveCan. Every time Ottawa messes with IT, we end up with aggrieved constituents and massive cost overruns. The House will soon be seized with the committee's unanimous request for an inquiry. But let's move on. Will the government respect these unanimous views and launch a public and independent inquiry? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 7.7 million seniors receive their benefits in time, in a timely way, no mistakes. Yesterday, we provided a briefing to all members of the opposition that wanted to attend, and they shared all the technical problems. The briefing session actually disclosed all of that. If you have any other problems, further issues, further cases you want to discuss with me, I would be happy to answer your questions. A reminder that you must go through the chair if you use vous in French. The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, while the Liberals continue to bury their heads in the sand, 85,000 retirees are still unable to access their old day pensions because of Curam. As for Phoenix, after 10 years of problems, the Civil Servants Union revealed 2 weeks ago that there are still 233,000 cases to be resolved. These are not just statistics. These are people who deserve an end to these fiascos. When will there be a public and independent inquiry? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I already stated, 7.7 million people, seniors, are receiving their benefits in a timely way. The former system was fragile. It was expensive, and maintaining it would have been catastrophic. It would have led to an operational failure where no one would have received benefits. We're working on solutions, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Kenora-Kawatinuk.
The February jobs report is dire news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Canada lost 108,000 full-time jobs in February. This is the largest one-month decline in full-time employment since COVID. Further, we saw 73,000 job losses in the private sector, and youth unemployment shot up to over 14%. Under these Liberals, Canada has the only shrinking economy in the G7 and now the second highest unemployment in the G7 as well. So, Mr. Speaker, when will the Liberals listen to Canadians and the plan that we've put forward to remove taxes and the bureaucracies that are killing jobs in Canada?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Obviously, the jobs data that came out this morning, Mr. Speaker, is unfortunate, but the Conservatives can fixate on month-to-month data. They never mention, or their script never recites, anything on long-term trends. What did we see just a few days ago? An announcement very clear in Bloomberg. My colleague can go look at it. The largest amount of foreign investment that Canada has seen since 2007 secured for this country. That means jobs. That means opportunities for young people in particular. What did we see yesterday? A huge investment in Canada's north. Ports, airports, the construction of the Mackenzie Valley Highway, and the securing of Canada's north. That's how you build Canada.
The Honourable Member for Kenora-Kawatinuk.
Mr. Speaker, the difference between the Liberal rhetoric and the realities facing Canadians is stark. Canadians aren't working because Liberal policies aren't working. We have the only shrinking economy in the G7 and now the second highest unemployment in the G7. And to make matters worse, Mr. Speaker, Canada has the highest food price inflation in the G7 on top of it. We are leading in all of the wrong categories. So when will the Liberals remove the taxes and bureaucracies that are killing jobs in Canada and driving up the cost of living?
Hear, hear. Parliamentary Secretary.
My colleague is very well read. He will look at the recent reports of the International Monetary Fund that has made clear that Canada stands as an example for the G7 and, in fact, for the entire OECD and beyond. What we have now is an opportunity to engage in serious policy to build up this country. I mentioned the investments in Canada's north yesterday. We have investments in Canada's west. I hope they support that at least. In Canada's east, it's a jobs focus. It's a focus on opportunity because opportunity leads to jobs. That leads to purchasing power. That leads to affordability. That's how we build up this amazing country.
The honourable member for Sudbury East, Manitoulin and Nickel Belt.
Mr. Speaker, it's true. We can't control what happens abroad, and we can't make excuses on affordability issues that stem from bad decisions from these Liberals. The Prime Minister continues to go ahead with bad policy like industrial carbon tax and the fuel standard tax that will rise to 17 cents. This applies to every Canadian, especially those who bring us our food, driving up the cost of your grocery bill even more. When will these Liberals accept responsibility for what they can control and remove policies that make life more expensive for Canadians?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Finance.
For the honourable member, just yesterday, our Bill C4 of affordability measures got royal assent in our Senate, which is fantastic news because that means 22 million Canadians will receive a tax cut on their income tax, saving $840 for dual income families. And families that are trying to purchase their first home will save up to $50,000 on homes under $1 million. That's good news for Canadians all across this country. We've also moved forward with the groceries and essentials benefit, which will save families just under $1,900 a month this year. That's
the honourable member for Central Newfoundland.
I can't believe what I heard yesterday. The housing minister blames skyrocketing housing costs on the war in Iran. Mr. Speaker, everyone knows this affordability crisis is due to 10 years of his government. Canadians are facing the worst food inflation and the only shrinking economy in the G7. Yet this Prime Minister is pushing ahead with his industrial carbon tax and his fuel standard tax that will rise to 17 cents a litre. When will these Liberals stop blaming events abroad and take responsibility for policies at home to make life more affordable for Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welcome back to the member opposite. The last time we heard from that member, Mr. Speaker, you'll recall we established a permanent national food program for 400,000 children. What was his response? He said it was garbage, Mr. Speaker. How dare he stand up and talk about affordability, and yet when we want to feed children, what does he say? He calls the program garbage. Silliness. That's what the member's all about, Mr. Speaker. Get on board. Support the budget.
Honourable member. Order. The honourable member. Order. The honourable member for Saskatoon South.
Mr. Speaker, Canada has the worst food inflation and the only shrinking economy in the G7. Rising unemployment rates now. Canadians are facing a serious cost of living crisis. Grocery prices are skyrocketing. Paychecks are stretched so thin right now, they don't cover the cost of the basic necessities. Canadians deserve an economy where hard work pays off. When will these Liberals take responsibility for their punishing taxes and their policies?
The Honourable Secretary of State for the Canada Revenue Agency.
Mr. Speaker, we're going to continue to fight for Canadians like Paul Britt, Steve McQueen, Pat Allen, Gordie Vale, and Canadians from coast to coast to coast. On this side of the House, we're going to focus on building the strongest economy in the G7. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? We have one of the fastest growing economies in the G7, best net debt to GDP in the G7, one of the best credit ratings in the world. Wages are outpacing inflation. Mr. Speaker, Canadians made a choice. They elected a leader with strong economic and business credentials versus a leader, conservative leader, who has never worked one day in the economy. Thank you.
The honourable member for Labrador.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that building a stronger economy means opening new markets and bringing investment home. From advancing major projects to attracting billions in investment to creating new demand for Canadian manufacturing, International trade is creating real opportunities for workers here at home, including opportunities in our aviation, aerospace, and defense sectors and Canada's seafood sector. Can the Minister of International Trade update the House on how our government's work abroad is delivering investments and jobs for Canadians? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Labrador have sent a strong champion here in Ottawa, and together we're unlocking new global opportunities. In China, we achieved tariff relief on crab and lobster, welcomed by harvesters across Newfoundland and Labrador. In Australia, the Prime Minister secured a $10 billion commitment to build Canada. In the Gulf, VistaJet ordered 40 Canadian-made airplanes worth over $1 billion. Together, these wins are unlocking opportunities and jobs in construction, aerospace, fisheries, seafood, and more. Mr. Speaker, this is how we build Canada strong.
Nice. Honourable member for Lakeland.
Said, quote, "A crisis is a terrible thing to waste. It takes 20 years to get a mine built in Canada, while the U.S. approves mines on federal lands in 28 days under emergency crisis rules. Canada sends rare earths to Beijing that controls 90% of world refining and processing, while C-69 blocks the Ring of Fire with endless regional assessments. Sounds like a waste of a crisis to me. So when will the PM approve the Ring of Fire permits so the private sector can build mines here at home?"
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I sit on the Natural Resources Committee with the Honourable Member. She knows too well how complicated it is and to do a project like the Ring of Fire, which is actually a multiple project. We're working with the Government of Ontario. We've already started to work with them on the road to access the Ring of Fire because it requires major infrastructure to get to the Ring of Fire. So she should understand that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Lakeland.
But 4 years after these Liberals' fake critical mineral strategy, not 1 inch of road exists to the Ring of Fire. Nothing on the 2 First Nations-led roads to get it done. Liberals let both foes and allies into Canada's backyard while they drag timelines the rest of the world rejects. The Ring of Fire would connect globally strategic minerals to First Nations, manufacturers, Canadians, and our allies. It's always been true, but with new global conflicts, the world needs Canada's minerals. So for the love of God, when will the Liberals unlock the Ring of Fire for affordability, sovereignty, security, and self-reliance before it's too late?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I found it very interesting that the member talks about benefits for the First Nation, and what they would like us to do is to bulldoze, ignore the constitutional rights of the First Nation. So I don't understand what they're saying. Help them or follow the rules?
There, good point.
Order. The member got a question. The member got a response. The member for Regina Wascana.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Natural Resources promised that Canada would do its part to help release oil reserves in order to stabilize the market. But Canada doesn't have a strategic oil reserve, in part because of Liberal energy policies that have kept Canadian oil and gas in the ground. Conservatives have proposed a strategic oil stockpile that will allow us to fuel our friends abroad, power paychecks at home, and diversify our trade. Will the Liberals adopt our plan so we can be stronger at home while building unbreakable leverage abroad?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Energy and Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, let me explain something to the member opposite. A strategic reserve is for importing countries. We are an exporting country. And guess what? We have centuries worth of reserve in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Excellent job.
The Honourable Member for Regina Wascana.
Speaker, we should be and exporting it to the rest of the world. Unfortunately, the Liberals have killed the Northern Gateway Pipeline, the Keystone XL Pipeline, the Energy East Pipeline, all of which could be exporting Canadian oil at $100 a barrel to the rest of the world. How much higher does the price have to go before the Liberals flip-flop again and admit that there is a business case for exporting Canadian oil and gas to the world?
The Honourable Minister of International Trade.
Speaker, Canadian energy is bringing the world to our doorstep. The LNG Canada project alone is linking Canadian natural gas to major energy markets in Asia, to Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, China, and more. These partnerships show that Canada's energy is respected and it creates good jobs here at home. That's exactly what we're doing to get more energies to new export markets around the world.
Member for Red Deer.
Mr. Speaker, Canada should be standing ready to provide our energy both within our borders and to global allies. But a decade of Liberals leave-it-in-the-ground policies have hampered our energy industry, divided our country, and left Canada as the only G7 country without a strategic oil stockpile. Conservatives have a plan for a strategic energy and mineral reserve to control the distribution of our resources around the world. Will the Liberals adopt our Conservative plan so we can be stronger at home and build unbreakable leverage abroad?
Yes. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, let's get a reality check. The Conservative plan, when his leader was in government, they didn't even construct 1 inch, not 1 inch of pipeline to the Tidewaters. That's the truth, Mr. Speaker. And you want us to follow that?
Order. I cannot hear the Parliamentary Secretary. Order. I will let the Parliamentary Secretary. Order. Now I'm going to let the Parliamentary restart from the beginning so I can hear the response, and then we will continue.
Reality, the facts. You cannot change history. Not 1 inch of pipeline was constructed while he was as the leader of the Conservative Party when they were in government. Not 1 inch to Tidewater, Mr. Speaker. Now contrast that to this government where we have record amounts of oil and gas being exported. Look at LNG alone, Mr. Speaker. This is a government that realizes the potential of the prairies, unlike the Alberta MPs that stand up and do nothing. They don't even listen to Daniel Smith. Shame on you.
Hear, hear.
Just a reminder to Parliamentary Secretary, you don't speak directly to member to the speakership. The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Remember the sponsorship scandal? It was a bunch of Liberals running around with money in brown envelopes, handing it out to other Liberal insiders. Well, the Trudeau Liberals said, that's too complicated. We got to go get the money, then you got to get the envelopes, then you got to run around and hand it out. So they created the Green Slush Fund, where they appointed the people to run it, and the people that run it gave it to their own companies. But they got caught. So these so-called new Liberals came up with a new plan. That is to give well below market rate loans to Liberal-controlled companies to pad their profits. No matter how many Liberal governments there are, why is it the same corruption?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it's amazing how the Conservative Party is so focused on character assassination. And that's fine. You be concerned about that. We are concerned as a government and the Prime Minister about what's happening in Canada. That's why you see a Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, that's going out, bringing in billions of dollars of investment. That's why we see export opportunities being created. That's why you see billions of dollars of development by this government, by this Prime Minister, because we care about what's happening across Canada.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
We care what happens in Canada as well. We want development. We just don't want corrupt Liberal development. Because no matter which government it is, they find a way to engage in corrupt practices. Under the Chrétien Liberals, it was the sponsorship scandal, handing out money in envelopes. Under the Trudeau Liberals, it was create a fund run by Liberals who gave the money to their own companies. Now these guys have said, we found a new plan. The so-called new government has a new plan, and this is to give subprime loans to Liberals to pad their profits. Why is every new Liberal government corrupt?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians want action, not political games. And that's what our government is delivering. We're creating hundreds of local jobs, supporting communities, and building energy projects, infrastructure projects from coast to coast to coast that power homes, that grow our economy. The Conservatives opposite can keep talking on that side of the House, but we're about action.
The honourable member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Thank you. At a time when families are struggling to pay the bills. It's funny, the Liberals always seem to be able to find hundreds of millions of dollars to help their well-connected friends. It's pretty clear in Canada, if you want to succeed today, you have to be a Brookfield shareholder or be friends with the right people in the Liberal Parliament. The Liberals gave a $206 million loan to well-connected friends for a wind farm in Nova Scotia. But another project that started around the same time and that got its funding from the private sector. So why is it that with the Liberals, it's always Canadians who pay the bill? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, this is a project about clean energy, job creation, and economic growth. It was approved under an arm's length process directed by civil servants who are nonpartisan. Even the Nova Scotia Progressive Conservative government supports this project, and we can see why. It will create hundreds of good jobs for Nova Scotians, and it will strengthen local communities. The honourable member for Montmorency-Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, it's because of news like this that people are losing trust in our institutions. The government tells us that there was no favoritism, but it's actually very clear what happened. Can they say today that no minister, no member of cabinet, no Liberal insider actually took part in this process? Will they make all of the documents linked to this public? We're talking $150 million in federal subsidies and $206 in a sweetheart deal. So Canadians, Quebecers have a right to know. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think maybe what we should do is to give a tangible example for members opposite. When we talk about investing in Canadians, investing in Canada, making Canada a stronger and healthier nation, a good example of that is the majors projects, in which we are seeing projects, whether it's LNG in BC, mining in Saskatchewan, the expansion of the Montreal port in Quebec, nuclear energy, $60 billion plus. That's how you invest in Canada, and it's something in which we should all be proud of, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, our government has a clear mandate to strengthen the viability of the immigration system. I know that the Minister is working very hard, cooperating with Quebec. The Minister is seeking to support Quebec businesses and to fulfill our mission of building the strongest economy in the G7. We are aiming to reduce the number of temporary residents by the end of 2027, but we also know that Quebec employers need stability. Can the Minister inform this House about how our government is going to support the transition of essential workers? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. I'd like to thank the member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. We understand the challenges that businesses and communities are facing, but good news, I am working hard with Quebec on a solution. And today, we have announced a new policy to help transition essential workers into permanent residence so that they can contribute up to an additional year in Quebec. We respect the mandate we received and we are listening to Quebecers. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Cambridge.
Mr. Speaker, copper theft is not an innocent crime. When vandals target essential infrastructure like cell towers and power transformers, they're not just breaking the law, they're putting human lives at risk. Copper theft literally leaves people in the dark and stranded when they need help the most. Last year in the Cambridge area alone, there were at least 15 cell service outages linked to these crimes, leaving residents unable to call 911 in an emergency. Do these Liberals realize that copper theft poses a significant threat to public safety and agree that the House of Commons should take action now to protect our communities?
Honourable, l'honorable secrétaire parlementaire du ministre de la Sécurité publique.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. It is an important one. The government is concerned about copper theft. It is an essential material for communications. And to ensure that we are protecting telecommunications safety. We are taking strong measures. We have spoken with the RCMP and police services. We are carrying out investigations to prevent these crimes.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the response from the member opposite, but there's more we can be doing. With Bell Canada designating Cambridge as a hotspot for copper theft, it is a real and ongoing risk for people in my community who depend on reliable power and cell service, especially during emergencies. The experts are clear. We need tougher penalties for thieves and vandals, deterrence for repeat offenders, and concrete steps to stop stolen metals from being sold on the black market. Do these Liberals agree that these are common sense measures to stop copper theft? And will they commit to working with Conservatives to put these priorities into law?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind my colleague that Bill C-14 will make sentencing more severe for repeat offenders. And I am prepared to discuss this topic with my colleague to see if we could do more on this specific offence, copper theft.
Mr. Speaker, my private member's bill C-243 is being read for the second time today. It's a common sense bill. It will lessen the anguish of those who've had loved ones stolen from them by murderers. This Conservative bill would reduce annual parole hearings for murderers from every year to every 5 years. Parole hearings are traumatizing. This is a compassionate law supporting the loved ones of murder victims, and it's endorsed by thousands of Canadians and police nationwide. So will these Liberals stand up for victims?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada.
Mr. Speaker, these crimes that are being committed practically on a daily and weekly basis are simply unacceptable. We are committed to be able to put forward robust laws to be able to tackle these issues, and it would be a pleasure for me to sit down with the member and go over his PMB. We will certainly engage in making sure that Canadians are always protected.
Honourable Minister Cardigan.
Mr. Speaker, it's a privilege to rise here today to represent the people of Eastern PEI. And like many residents of Canada, they're frustrated by the trend of increasing banking fees and charges. Our government has taken action by capping non-sufficient fund fees. These can run as high as $50 and impact mostly low-income Canadians. In many cases, these fees add up to hundreds of dollars over the year. Can the Secretary of State for the CRA and financial institutions outline what this measure means for Canadians?
Honourable Secretary of State for the CRA and financial institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my friend from Cardigan for the great work he does in this House and in his riding. We are focused squarely on making life more affordable for Canadians, and that's why yesterday we capped non-sufficient fund fees that banks charge at $10. Wow. Before this measure came into place, fees were as high as $50, and Canadians could be charged multiple times a day. It's not going to happen anymore, and it means that more vulnerable Canadians will save hundreds of dollars per year. We are focused on making life more affordable for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Similkameen South Okanagan and West Kootenay.
Yesterday, in a discussion about unsafe injection sites, I asked the Liberal Minister of Health the easiest possible question: is injecting fentanyl safe? Instead of a straight answer, the minister laughed and said that research shows continuing to inject fentanyl saves lives.
Shameful.
Extending addiction doesn't save lives. I will ask again, does the minister believe injecting illegal fentanyl is safe?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me set the record straight. Fentanyl is a controlled substance, and that member knows that physicians use fentanyl in an extremely controlled environment to treat patients. And supervised consumption sites save lives, connect people to services. And this is only the one tool in our many toolboxes that we're working collaboratively with provinces and territories. We're supporting communities to tackle this toxic drug crisis. So it will be wonderful that the Conservative side can join us instead of painting the record dark.
Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
In Davos, the Prime Minister declared Canada will live the truth by acting consistently, applying the same standards to allies as well as rivals. Mr. Speaker, Canada has rightly condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine as illegal, yet the Prime Minister is supporting the United States and Israel as they wage an equally illegal war on Iran. This double standard undermines Canada's credibility and erodes the rules-based order we depend on for our security. Why is the Prime Minister walking away from the principles he championed just weeks ago?
The Honourable I need someone to rise. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je pense que
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think the Prime Minister has been very clear. International law must be respected. Currently, events are occurring. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if this is about the sanctions that were raised by the Americans on Russian oil. But we, of course, condemn Iran's strikes on civilian infrastructure, especially energy and maritime infrastructure throughout the Middle East. We know that Russia is trying to take advantage of the increase in prices, and Canada is against that. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Patrie. Hi, Grandma. It's your grandson. I need your help. I just need your PIN. We all know how that story goes. With AI, we see worse and worse banking frauds and scams, and now your bank would tell you that they can't do anything to help you because you voluntarily gave your info to the scammers. Even though you're the victim, it's supposedly your fault, even though banks are supposed to protect us. The Prime Minister used to be a banker. What does he think of this? Should he make banks responsible for these scams? Will he help average people, or will he help his friends at the banks? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Well, I'm very pleased to say that recently we've created a new agency that will combat organized crime, money laundering, and the types of scams that my colleague was talking about. That's all going to be part of the agency to fight financial crime and money laundering.
Question period.